Hi, it's Scott, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast review for you. Going to talk about the 2024 documentary, Cheech Chong's Last Movie. Before I get into any kind of history about this, as a 4K, it's okay. It's a really cool steel book with a nice slipcover. It's got some extras on it. It is in Dolby Atmos. It does have HDR10 on it. I wouldn't say it's a showcase for anything because it's a lot of old footage, things in low res. They've done their best, and it really does look amazing for what it is. But like some of the modern stuff looked overblown. So if you're listening to this review for the 4K part of it, it's a fine 4K. But if you can find it on Blu-ray, it's probably just as good. There wasn't anything that blew me away, although colors did pop. The surround sound was really good, and there are quite a few extras on it. There was no digital copy, but there is a pamphlet in there for the movie, and you flip it over, it's ads for the merch you can get for the movie. So to give you a little history about Cheech Chong in the documentary, back in the 70s and 80s, comedy albums were very popular. You would go over to people's houses, and they'd be playing them at parties and stuff. When I was too young, at the ages of like 11 to 13, I was listening to a lot of comedy. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Folks like Steve Martin and Richard Pryor were pushing the envelope. Eddie Murphy came along after, a few things. And there were several others that were doing very well. I was a huge Steve Martin fan. But Cheech Chong was one that was out earlier than kind of my era, but I was getting old enough that parents didn't really care if I listened to that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because it was really funny then. It was definitely funny in high school and college. And when this movie was announced, I've been in a lot of 4K forums and stuff. There's a lot of people who are just against Cheech Chong for, their shtick as they came up with were being stoners. I mean, that was kind of their thing. But their comedy went way beyond that. And when you find out the history of why they even got to this point, it's very interesting. It's fascinating how between the two of them being creative and not ever being fully as creative as they wanting to be and winding up in the same town and in Canada, no less, and getting together and then morphing what they were doing, some improvisational theater and stuff, into the comedy duo that they became. So you have to realize how big their comedy albums were. They were really, really big. Like everybody knew who they were, not through their movies yet. The comedy albums were what was working. So they got a deal to make a movie, and they really got screwed on the deal. They made 10% off. I think the movie went on to gross over $50 million, $48 million or something like that, which was a lot of money in the early 70s. You learn all of this in this documentary. So anyway, I'm familiar with Cheech Chong before I was familiar with the culture that they're making fun of. They had a lot of, in their early albums, had a lot of stuff that wasn't about cannabis. It was from Basketball Jones and some of the other stuff. They had characters. The dog thing that they stole from an improv company was really funny. But anyway, long story short, somebody really loves them. David David L. Bushell, this is his directorial debut, made this 2-hour documentary. It premiered at South by Southwest in 2024 and was given a theatrical release in April of this year. Just came out on home video in the last week or so, and I had pre-ordered it. It came in, and I didn't have much else going on. It was snowy outside. I decided to watch. I was in the mood for kind of a documentary. I wanted to see if I would learn something or at least laugh out loud. At Rotten Tomatoes, this is sitting at 87%. A lot of people like it. I think it's a great documentary, actually, because it's a documentary done by somebody who really loves the subject matter. The whole idea of the movie is they're on a road trip trying to find a place called The Joint. And they recall their lives from childhood to joining forces to breaking up in the 80s. And it talks about the movies and the good and the bad and why they turned out the way they did. But it's all done in not so much comedy, but lighthearted, because you're on a road trip with the two guys and they're back in their normal old characters. They're bantering back and forth. They can't find the joint that they were supposed to have, and then they find some gummies. And so there's not a whole lot of drug use in the movie. Most of the drug use that anybody would be offended by is all done in clips from the 70s and 80s. This movie is not about that. It's about these two guys who started very differently. Tommy Chong was a musician. Cheech Marin didn't really know what he wanted to be, but was becoming a comedian and an actor. And the two of them, at the right time, just kind of met. You need to watch the documentary if you want to know more. It's a lot of old clips, a lot of home movies, a lot of pictures I've never seen before. As someone who's a fan, who owns a handful of their movies, who saw all the movies in theaters when I was a kid, and I don't really watch them now. I did buy their first movie when it came out because it's a classic. It's got some really funny stuff in it, especially if you work in rock radio. There's a lot of lines you can be pulled out and used because they're in a band. It's a music road trip kind of movie with cannabis in it. Anyway, long story short, I am a Cheech and Chong fan, but I don't really watch them these days. I don't watch the old movies. The movies got worse as they went along. And it just kind of ran out of steam, and you find out why. But anyway, I do like the guys and what they've done later. They've kind of become like Penn and Teller and a few other comedy duos who have transcended the stand-up comedy thing to just become icons, characters, people we think about, people we listen to when they speak. And you know, Chong has definitely stayed in the cannabis side of things. I have friends who interviewed him in Birmingham, Alabama on a radio show and went up on the roof and, you know, did what they do kind of thing. Cheech got out of it for a while, and he still won't grow the mustache back. And they tell all these stories. Now, this may be a little long for somebody who's not a fan. I think maybe they could have trimmed a little bit towards the end, because they spend a long time on the beginnings, which I think is fantastic. But we kind of blaze through the last few years that they were together. And you go through that very quickly, because I understand they don't really, I mean, they talk about why Chong was directing and how Cheech kind of at some point thought he was putting in, you know, 50% and he really wasn't. And he realizes that now, but still is a little sore about it. And this is all very real. It's all very down to earth. And what makes the documentary, again, not to give too many spoilers away, but like in the beginning, I didn't know that Chong was previously married before he met his current wife, the woman he's been with for decades. And he tells the complete story. We always wondered about Rae Dawn Chong and where she came from. And then his ex-wife appears in the film briefly. Like, she pops up in the car and says a response, because they're like, why did she stay with him? And she pops into the documentary and tells you why. And it's like, wow. And that happens multiple times. And I think that's great to bring people that they're actually talking about and they have film clips of now, currently, pop into the conversation to say, yeah, that happened. You don't see that in a whole lot of documentaries, and it's great. And the way it ends, I think it's good. I kind of wanted a little more slam bang at the end, but, you know, it does what it needs to do. A hair long for a documentary, but if you're a fan, 123 minutes with credits is not that long to spend when they go into great detail. And the film clips and the whole musical career that Tommy Chong had before he was a comedian, working with Berry Gordy in signed bands and almost made it, opening for, you know, it's pretty incredible. There's even a clip in the documentary Bruce Springsteen talks about in his early days. He opened up for Cheech and Chong. I mean, you learn a lot. That's what I love about documentaries. And this is a documentary that is about movies. It's about comedy. It's about stand-up comedy. It's about comedy duos. It's about these two gentlemen. And it's about a lot more than that, and how movies get made. And there's just a lot in a 2-hour film. I'm very happy to have it in the collection, because it is one I would pull. I would actually pull this out before most of their movies, just because it's a little bit more entertaining and you learn stuff. And I know I could show it to friends and they would go, wow, I didn't know any of that. So you don't have to be blazed to enjoy the film. It's a documentary, and there's really a lot less of that in there than you think, even though that's their shtick, and you learn all about that too. It really is a great documentary. I don't know if it's going to win too many awards, but it was well done. It was entertaining. The 4K release looks great, sounds great. Check it out if you're so inclined. Cheech and Chong's last movie is available now on 4K. I think it's also available on Blu-ray. It's available on streaming services, and I really enjoyed the time. So, Scott, I'm ROCKFILE. More podcasts are on the way. Please like, share, and subscribe, and have a spectacular day.